We're going to be talking about Cocaine Bear, horror comedy, inspired by the 1985 true story of a drug runner's plane crash, missing cocaine and the black bear that ate it. It's wildly dark comedy, finds an oddball group of cops, criminals, tourists, and teens converging in a Georgia forest where a 500-pound apex predator has ingested a staggering amount of cocaine and has gone on a coke-fueled rampage for more blow and blood. I mean, how do you not greenlight that? How do you not greenlight? Just based on the title alone, that's a green light for me, dog. Like Cocaine Bear. Yes. Awesome. Leading up to its release, like I listened to Conan Needs a Friend. He interviewed Elizabeth Banks, who is the director and producer. She directed Charlie's Angels, that remake in 2019 that kind of bombed. Had the lady from the Twilight series as one of the Charlie's Angels. She directed Pitch Perfect 2. She's also produced, I think she produced Pitch Perfect 3. And she also directed a segment of movie 43, a notoriously awful movie, from what I've heard. I haven't watched it. I think I did see a clip from that, and I was like, wow, how did they get so many people of like name actors to participate in this god awful film? So I listened to the Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend interview with Elizabeth Banks. I just, Lights, Camera, Barstool is a podcast I listened to from Barstool Sports, focusing on movies and TV shows. They were really high on it, pun intended. And so I this was like the little engine that could, right? It was the underrated comedy horror movie that a February release, when most movies that are released in February are usually stinkers, right? That's like a downtime in the movie going schedule calendar. It's probably the worst month for movie releases, right? But this is one that's like, okay, it's been relegated to that kind of bad month, but then again, like the original Deadpool, first Deadpool came out in February and like did almost $1 billion at the box office globally. So this is not anywhere close to doing Deadpool numbers, but there was the sense that like, okay, this is like the darling. This is an underrated underground kind of, even though it's not an indie, right? It's released by Universal Pictures, but it does feel like this could be something that sweeps the nation and sweeps the globe as, coming out of nowhere and being a hit. Like, the expectations for a movie like Cocaine Bear out the gate is probably tepid at best, right? But there was this groundswell, right? People talking really positively and highly about it. Like it exceeded their expectations. Conan O'Brien included, a guy who I value his opinion, and Lights, Camera, Barstool, I somewhat value their opinion, the guys on there. So I was excited. I think normally without that kind of positive word of mouth, I probably just would have waited. I wouldn't have gone to see it in the theater. I would have waited until it hit streaming. I left that theater and I was like, fuck. In my head, how I saw it all unraveling, rolling out was like, you go in and the theater's like kind of packed, which is odd for a Monday. And when I bought the ticket, I saw like, wow, there's seats galore. There are just open seats everywhere. And this is opening weekend-ish. Monday night's not really the weekend, but it's like the Monday after the opening weekend. I understand Monday nights are not, who goes to the movies on Monday nights? This guy, I was like, oh, that's kind of odd. I was expecting it to be at least a few more people in the audience. So that should have been the first sign that I was going to be disappointed. But yeah, just left that screening being like, fuck, I wanted to like be so entertained, moved, and have such a positive reaction to it that I'd come and maybe even do a reaction that night, have that kind of excitement come through on the podcast on Tuesday night. And I was like, I'm just not excited about the movie, how it turned out. Like, I don't even know if I need to do a review but I'm coming across as this contrarian, because I think you're seeing a lot of people like Lights, Camera, Barstool, Conan saying like, oh, it's so funny. One of the funniest movies of the year. So fun. And I just didn't get that experience. I didn't get it. Like I went into the theater. It was pretty empty. There was a group of guys behind me who were cracking up most of the movie. And I was like, man, I wish I was on that level. This movie had me questioning reality. My reality had me questioning my mental state, my mindset, had me questioning my sense of humor. I was like, am I just not, what is wrong with me? It was just like, what is wrong with me? It just didn't click for me. And I think partially the reason might have been, my state of mind, my mindset, because that earlier that day at work in the morning when I went to the bathroom, I don't know why I was thinking this or how I was thinking this, but I can only describe as like a panic attack, I think, or just severe existential dread. I don't know why I was at work. I don't know why it happened in the bathroom, but it was just like I started every once in a while, and it's usually during the Sunday scaries, right? You're laying in bed. If you're working a normal 9-to-5 job, you got to go in the office the next day. You've been relaxing, partying, doing nothing with your life over the weekend, destroying your body and your mind. And then, the Sunday realization comes around that like, oh, fuck, I now have to be normal and go back to work and be as a functioning member of society again. And that's usually when your mind starts to go off the rails. And that's what happened. That usually is when the place and the location and the time for when that dread comes in, where I start to think about, what am I doing with my life? But then that leads to, fuck, time is running out. And, oh no, I'm 42. And like, oh no, all these things that I was supposed to have accomplished and achieved by now haven't happened. And like, am I any closer to that? And what is my legacy going to be? And what is it like when you die? What happens after you die? And then the realization that odds are, all indications, all signs point to like nothing. And what does nothing feel like? Because like right now, it's like I'm seeing, I'm hearing, I'm smelling, I'm feeling, but there's like nothing. I've never felt nothing and saw nothing and heard nothing and like nothing. And so then, that like it's unbelievable what goes on from that point. And maybe you've experienced this, but from my tippy to top of my head all the way down to my piggy toes, there's just this wave of like, whoa. It's almost like my body's trying to project or guess or predict what nothing feels like. It's a really weird, bad feeling. Nothing. So that happened in the morning. And I'm pretty sure that had an effect and impact on my viewing experience of Cocaine Bear. Like you go from, oh my God, like my body, my mind are trying to like simulate death where like, okay, there's nothing. And I don't even get to see how people react to my, you know what I mean? Like there's always that fantasy where you get to see how people would react if you died. Like what would people be saying about you? What would the consensus be? You don't get to experience or see any of that. And the thought that like when you die, you don't get to see, you don't know or how, it's all this stuff that it's just like, boop, that's it. You're just boop, gone. Like there's nothing else. And that's, whew. It really can do a number on you. So I think that probably had an impact on me going into this movie. And then as I'm sitting there with my large ass bucket of popcorn by myself, because I'm a loser, baby. Yeah. I started, and the trailers are coming on. I started thinking about like what would happen if a guy, and it all of a sudden became the plot of a movie. Like I'm in a movie theater watching trailers, waiting for the movie. And I'm thinking about what happens if a person just walks in this, and I'm like the only person in this theater, vastly empty theater, and just sits right next to me. It's like, dude, there's all these other seats. You can't sit anywhere else. And then that person shows me their phone, and it says like, I have planted bombs in every movie theater in America. And if you don't do what I say, I'm going to blow them all up. And they're all packed with people, even though it's a Monday night. And so now I'm like creating this friggin' movie in my head, waiting for a movie as movie trailers are playing about just an insane premise. And I'm like, all right, dude, whatever, get the fuck away from me. You're a psycho. And then he shows me a live stream, and it's a movie theater. And then it's like an explosion goes off to show that he's serious. And then now I start to take him seriously. And it's like, I'm creating all this in my head. And then Evil Dead Rise, that fucking new Evil Dead reboot trailer comes on, and I can't even watch it. I can't even bring myself to watch it because I have watched it. I think I've watched it in the past, and it's just like I think it's the sounds that get to me, like the squishy sounds and like the egg hitting the pan, and it's like I can't. Nope, no thanks. So that should give you some insight into. Like I have horror brain, and I appreciate suspense mystery thrillers. But I don't think I have the stomach or even that type of dark black humor within me. Like I love Weekend at Bernie's. Weekend at Bernie's is a dark comedy, black comedy. It's two guys, their boss dies and they carry him around and make him look like he's alive for the weekend. That's pretty, like, my 8-year-old, 9-year-old brain was like, this is hilarious. And it's like, I didn't even think about, oh, well, that guy's dead. He's not experiencing any of this. Like he doesn't know anything's going on. He's not conscious. He's just not processing. Like, but like, I still can watch that movie today and enjoy it and appreciate it. So why can't I appreciate this horror comedy? And I guess for me and for a lot of people that enjoyed it, the comedy comes from a lot of the like really gory, nasty, graphic horror, that's just not in my wheelhouse. Like for whatever reason, I can appreciate cartoons on that level where it's like over the top violence. And I was thinking about this as the movie was happening, because like I wouldn't say detached, but I was just like, my mind started going elsewhere. I was like, why am I not enjoying this? Like the group behind me, like the group of guys behind me, where like, there's a scene where, there's a scene where there's an ambulance and the patient in the ambulance that's driving away from the bear. The patient on the stroller, like as the ambulance is speeding away, like falls out of the trailer and like flips so that the patient is, facing downward, and like hits the ground and skids and like rips off the face. And it's just like, I was like, ooh, like, oh, like that turned my stomach. And these motherfuckers behind me are laughing. And I was just like, and I'm not criticizing them for laughing. I just don't have that disposition. I just don't have that within me to, but if it's almost like if that were a cartoon, like there's some really violent cartoons and you can laugh because it's so cartoonish. It's so like, it's just so absurd and ridiculous that's when I laugh. This felt like too real. If that's, I don't know. And I started thinking about like, I remember I do laugh at some ultra violent stuff, but like it is cartoonish. And I started thinking about, what was it, that Grindhouse movie? And there's a 2-parter, right? And I don't know if it's the Tarantino one or the Rodriguez one. I think Tarantino is the one with the car and Kurt Russell. That one was ultra violent. And I was like, I could feel my stomach turning. And I was like, I can't, it's too real. The other one was like, they're shooting essentially what are zombies or mutants or something like that. And it's just like, an ungodly amount of blood, like buckets of blood flying everywhere. And to me, that's funny because like, I know it's not real. It's over the top. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. This was just like too real for me. I don't know. I'm just like, I'm watching, like, I'm enjoying, like I'm supposed to enjoy and entertain and watch all these people just get savagely attacked by a bear. That's funny. Like am I laughing at that? Because there were people laughing at that. And I was just like, you know what? Maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know. Like that younger generation has seen some shit and been through so much shit and seen so much on the internet. The early days of the internet when they're growing up, the formative years, developing that, beheadings and whatnot. So things so graphic in nature that can't even bring myself to watch even now as a grown ass man. This is funny to them, where it's like it's just a bear ripping through people. I didn't laugh a ton, I guess is what I'm saying. There was, I could name probably on one hand 2 to 3 times where I laughed out loud. One was a gag that was like no one else laughed at because I don't think anyone else really noticed. Was like on the sign, there was on the billboard, I think it said like, it was advertisement for a big billboard ad for a bar. And towards the bottom, it said like either home of the original glory hole or brand new glory hole or something like that on the bottom of the sign. And I was like, oh, that's nice. That's funny. A little chuckle. Alden Ehrenreich, whatever, sitting in the bar eating pasta. Like it's just a funny, like who goes to a bar, gets shit canned and like eats penne pasta without chicken. Like that's funny. That got a nice laugh out of me. But otherwise, I don't know. I've kind of gone into a lot of details without giving you any kind of context. Produced by Phil Lord and Chris Miller. And it's like, maybe you're not a huge fan of Pitch Perfect or Elizabeth Banks' work on Charlie Angels or whatnot, but Phil Lord and Chris Miller have a an amazing resume of hits. You know, they're known for Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, the Lego movies, so more kids fare, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but also 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street. In my opinion, the last laugh out loud comedy movies that have been released, I guess you could say maybe Trainwreck. You know, I've mentioned this in the past on the pod, but I wrote a blog in like 2017. I think it was after seeing that Get Out was like the top comedy of all time. And I was like, what are we doing here? I mean, what the fuck are we doing here? That's the top comedy of all time? Like, no. Like, great horror, awesome suspense, awesome thrilling. But if we're talking, and this is where, you know, having grown up watching Comedy Central like nonstop and Benny Hill and sitcoms and comedy, like comedy's been my life. And so I've always deferred to, and, you know, it's been a defense mechanism of mine for years. So for me, it's like, when I think comedy, I think of like laugh out loud, high laughs per minute, that kind of thing. Like lots of laughs, lots of jokes, funny, funny, funny. And I think comedy has gone through this kind of, especially in movies, this transformation of like, we're going to call this a comedy because it's not a drama. You know, as long as there's one or like more than two funny parts or more than one funny part. And I have to realize that comedy kind of takes on a broader definition than, oh, you're laughing at every scene. You know, every scene has a laugh. Like fucking Anchorman, dude. Like, so that's part of like, I look at it like, Get Out is a fucking comedy. Like I understand there's that just blew my mind. So I think that, you know, 21 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street, Neighbors, you know, Neighbors 2, those Trainwreck were like kind of the last of the, we're going to have a laugh in this scene, every scene throughout the entire comedy, throughout the whole movie. I just don't think you really see that anymore. So I don't view this as a comedy. I think this is a horror movie, and it's just like, it's not a drama. It's got action and it tries to be funny. I just don't know that it's laugh out loud funny. It's kind of like, oh, yeah. Okay. It's written by Jimmy Warden, who wrote the sequel to The Babysitter, which was kind of a cult smash hit. I don't know. It's like a kind of a surprising hit on, I believe, in Netflix. I don't know if it had a theatrical run. The original Babysitter, which I think was directed by McG, I want to say. And then this dude wrote the sequel to The Babysitter, which I think I might have reviewed, called Killer Queen, which was good. It was all right. The movie had a budget of $30 to $35 million, which a large portion of that went to the FX team that created the bear with CGI. There's always like a level of nervous and like concern or nerves around a movie that has such a prevailing presence of CGI, like a main component of the movie. Like the titular character, Cocaine Bear, is all CGI. Because if it doesn't look real, it's like, well, the whole movie is ruined. So it's smart of them to put a lot of that budget towards the bear. And I thought, you know, the bear looked good, you know, and I think it's grossed. So the budget was 35 million. I think it's pretty much made that back already at the box office. It's not a long movie, but it felt long. Hour 35 minutes. It just felt like it dragged. And that's what's so tough is like, you know, it's a great premise, but there's not a whole lot of plot to it. It's like guy dumps cocaine, bear finds cocaine. And in the real story, true story, the bear ODs on the cocaine. It's like, well, that's not a story. So how do we make a story? How about the bear doesn't die and goes on a rampage and starts killing a bunch of people? Okay, great. The cast has Keri Russell, who I had a huge crush on for a very long time. And I pretty much still do, I think. She plays a mother. I think she's a single mother. Sari, who's also a nurse. O'Shea Jackson Jr., who's in Straight Outta Compton. He's Ice Cube's kid. Plays David, who's like the underling to the drug dealer Sid, played by Ray Liotta in his last performance before passing away. Alden Ehrenreich as Eddie, who plays Sid's son, Ray Liotta's son, who lost his wife to cancer and has abandoned his son. Christian Convery is Henry. He's the Sari's daughter's friend, a boy. Brooklyn Prince is Dee Dee. That's the Sari's daughter, Keri Russell's daughter in the movie. Isaiah Whitlock Jr., who I think is from The Wire. I haven't really watched all of The Wire. Sue me. As Bob, who's a local detective who's intent on bringing down Sid, the drug dealer. Margo Martindale as Ranger Liz, the park ranger. Ray Liotta as Sid, as we mentioned. Jesse Tyler Ferguson from Modern Family as Peter, who is like an inspector, wildlife inspector or something like that Ranger Liz has a crush on. Weird. There was a Duchamp gang Aaron Holiday, J.B. Moore, and Leo Hanna are the actors playing Stash Vest and Ponytail. Really thought those people were unnecessary. Like, didn't understand why they were in the movie other than they had to lead. One of the guys saw where the bag was dumped off, and so it's more of a plot device than anything else. So they led David and Eddie to the other bags of cocaine. And then Christopher Huju from Game of Thrones, he was the redhead dude with the long beard, as Olaf, who's a tourist. Engaged, played one half of an engaged couple that got attacked by the bear in like the opening scene, one of the opening scenes. Ayula Smart as Officer Reba, who again was just a plot device. Like, I guess that was the major plot twist in the movie, and I was just like, okay. Cool. Kahyun Kim as Beth, one of the paramedics. Scott Seiss, who I just followed him on social media, but I've been seeing his stuff for a while now on social media. He makes these videos where he's just they're hilarious. I mean, a million times funner and funnier than this movie. His posts, his video posts, where he basically takes down or makes fun of commonly popular expressions towards young people who retail workers, stuff like that. So I highly recommend following him on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you can follow him, TikTok, because he's hilarious in those videos. They're usually set to really dramatic soundtracks or songs playing in the background where it's like it's just so good. I don't even know how to describe it. And that's on me. That's my beat. So he plays the other paramedic, Tom, and I was hoping for and thought he was so close to stealing this movie, not just a scene, just like his scene. I thought his scene was going to steal the movie. That was going to be the thing that was going to be most remembered from this movie. And for the most part, it was, when the paramedics responds to the call at the forest, and his reaction to discovering the bear and then running away from the bear, like probably the best sequence in the movie. But even that sequence, I was just like, oh, this isn't funny. This is fucking so goddamn gratuitous and graphic, but not in a like lighthearted way, like cartoonish way. And then Matthew Rice from The Americans and the upcoming Perry Mason series on HBO Max. He plays Andrew C. Thornton the second, who's the drug smuggler, who I guess was a agent with the DEA, who then turned and became a smuggler for real. That scene might be the second best scene in the movie, or the best scene in the movie, because it's just the way he played it was his look, and the way he played it was so funny. And then what ends up happening where he's on the plane and he's transporting a shipment of cocaine on the plane. The plane's going down. He has to ditch the cocaine, so he's got them all in bags, and he's tossing the duffel bags out, but he's like kind of dancing, and he's got like energy because he's high on cocaine, and tries to parachute out, jump out of the plane before it crashes, and he trips or something and knocks himself out and falls to his death. Like, that's funny. Yeah, death is, whatever. I like that scene is funny. And then, but then I listened to the interview with O'Shea Jackson Jr. and Alden Ehrenreich on Lights, Camera, Barstool. And I was like, it was almost like you were witnessing like, oh, this feels like, is this the next great comedy duo? Like buddy comedy? Like, are these guys, is this just a launch point, like launch point for these two to do more projects together as like in buddy comedies? Because they had that kind of rapport with each other and relationship with each other in that interview. And I don't know that came across too much in the movie. Like there could have been, there's more there, I think, just by listening to that interview. Not to say that it was just like they had zero chemistry on the screen in the movie. They had chemistry in the movie, but it's just never. And I think that goes back to how the characters were written or something like that. I don't know. Like, O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s character is wearing a jersey. It looks like the most generic, like whatever jersey of all time. And then we're supposed to like sympathize with him when he gets in that fight in the bathroom with the Duchamp gang and gets stabbed in the back or the shoulder, and like it ruins his jersey. And we're supposed to, and he's really torn up about it. And it's like, why? That's jersey's like, the jersey, what is that jersey? It's like, it does not, I don't know. It's just like all the plot points are there. They have the plot devices, it's just, it feels, and I guess this was in the critics' consensus, but it does feel half baked. It's like, well, we know we have a hit. We know automatically the hook is there. Cocaine Bear. Like, you read that title, you hear that title, and you're like, whoa, what's that? And you lean forward and you want to know more and you want to see more. So they knew they had that. So maybe they rushed through the process. I don't know. It doesn't feel like there's not enough comedic fodder or material there. Or they did, I don't know. It just didn't land with me, most of it. And that's just me. And I'm in the minority because a lot of people, audience, loves this movie. Like when the kids discover the cocaine. So I don't even know their names. Henry and Dee Dee, the two kids that I guess are like between the ages of 8 and 12, maybe in that range, 8 to 10. They discover the cocaine because they're going to the falls because the daughter has been asking her mother to go to the falls to paint the falls, which is a thing. And that's when they are in the forest to get lost, I think. And so they discover the cocaine and they end up sticking like a knife into the cocaine and pulling out like an ungodly amount of cocaine on the knife and then like eating it and putting it in their mouth. And so I've never done that, but they spit it out pretty quickly because it's like, it tastes like awful. But then other than the kid being like, oh, I have like something dripping in the back of my throat. There's zero indication that they are high on cocaine in the rest of the movie. And maybe that's because I've never done that where I like ate a fucking cup of cocaine and then spit it out almost, instantaneously. But there has to be some kind of lasting effects from that and some comedic gold to be mined there. No, like the whole sequences, the scenes, the shots with Bob, the detective, the grizzled detective, and this little foo-foo dog. It's like they lean into things that they think are gonna be, oh my god, this is hilarious, and we're gonna come back to this repeatedly in the movie. Like okay. That feel like, I don't know. Oof. I know. Listen. I don't. You would, if you know me, you would think, okay, this is right up my fucking alley. If you know me, you're like, oh, this is like right in Neal's wheelhouse. This is exactly what Neal would love, and that's what is so frustrating to me. Is like I just didn't love it. I don't even know if I liked it. It's like if this comes on again, I'm not going to watch it again because it's to me, it's such a disappointment. It's just a waste. You only really got one crack at this, right? I don't know. Maybe when I'm like. On my deathbed, they'll do a remake and it'll actually be funny. But the scene with the dude from social media and the paramedics, and they're driving away from the bear, and I guess the one paramedic, the male paramedic, is attacked, and then he shows up and his hand is off, like it's the dangling, like I almost threw up. Like it's just, you just gotta have a stomach for this stuff. And some people that's funny. I don't know. I just didn't find it funny. I think they invested a lot of valuable screen time into, okay, this park ranger is into this wildlife inspector who I presume is gay, and like spending more time than is necessary on that kind of sub plot because we feel like that's giving these characters depth or something, dimension, but it's just like, okay, like why are we spending time on this? It's like, and in reading more about it, it sounds like Elizabeth Banks was saying that if the bear were to come back to life or something, this would be the bear's revenge story, and you're just like supposed to sympathize with the bear, which makes a lot more sense for the movie because it's like a lot of these characters, you're like, none of these characters are that likable other than the mother-daughter, Keri Russell's character, the nurse, and her daughter, like trying to find the daughter. That was where they try to pull at your heartstrings a little bit and provide some kind of like emotional element to it. I mean, the actors did the best they could with the material. It's just, I want a little more for what people were saying. Because at first it's like, okay, cocaine bear, it's a bear that gets high on cocaine and attacks people. It's like, that's pretty straightforward. And that's what the movie was. So it's not like it was bad. It's just like, judging by people's reactions to it and the reviews and like, oh, it's so fun, so funny, so this, so that. I was expecting more and I didn't get it. Setups and payoffs. We've talked about it before. Setups and payoffs. This is the setup. Here's the payoff. This is the setup. Here's the payoff. And a lot of it felt like it was just inserted as plot devices to make sure the movie made sense, as opposed to here's a setup that in the moment you either like piques your interest or you don't pay attention to, but that has a really incredible payoff at the end. Spoiler, Ray Liotta at the end of the movie dies, obviously, because he's a bad dude, drug dealer, and he's the one keeps insisting that they find all the drugs, because if they don't, they're going to get murdered, which is a legitimate concern. Like, you're dealing with the cartel or whatever major organization that's probably pissed that they're losing tons and tons of money from their product. And so he's adamant about, like, we got to recover this, otherwise we're toast. So he keeps going and everyone else bails, and he gets disemboweled. And then the little cub bears start eating his entrails, and it's just like, ugh. And I think there were people laughing in the audience, and I was just like, nope. This is just not the movie for me. I didn't find that Stash, one of the Duchamp gangs, the one that ends up being the lone survivor. Like, there was one cutaway that I thought, oh, that was at least an attempt, like an attempt at humor. I almost would like have to have seen more of that, maybe. But like, I think he was supposed to be comedic relief, comic relief, and it was just like, again, they had all the right setups. I think the structure was good for the most part. The intentions were there. It's just how they were executed and the payoff, like the detective and his dog. Is that okay? It's kind of like, oh, it's a bit unexpected, but at the same time, it's like we're dedicating a lot of screen time to this, and the payoff was, oh, the detective, spoiler, gets shot and dies on the top of the gazebo, and the dog connects with Alden Ehrenreich's character, Eddie. He needs something to fill that void, that hole left by his wife dying. So then he takes the dog, and so there's that. So that was the payoff. And I was like, okay. I'm just saying, for the amount of, you know what I'm saying. I don't need to beat a dead horse here. I sound like a fucking broken record. I just thought there would be more. I just thought it would be different. So I don't know. We really need to go through the plot. It's just like, it's tough. Like that paramedic scene. I was like, okay, I saw it in the trailer, and I was like, okay, that's going to be the scene that really is going to put this over the top and put this as one of the top comedies of not just this year, but possibly of the past 10 years, 5 years, whatever. And it ends with like the guy getting his hand ripped off, which was fucking so disgusting. And then her not paying attention behind the wheel and driving into a tree at full speed and getting ejected through the windshield and rolling to a stop, and her dead face, like close up of her dead face looking into the camera. It's just like, again, is this a comedy? I just, it's a horror movie. It's a horror action movie that tried to be funny. And I don't think it succeeded to the level that warrants all this fucking positive buzz and talk. So, all right. I guess we do trivia. This, as I mentioned, this is Ray Liotta's final completed film role before his passing. Right around Memorial Day of 2022. He passed away a week after he came to re-record his lines in post-production. So yeah, the true event that happened in 85, this Andrew Thornton character was a corrupt Kentucky cop and a lawyer turned drug smuggler. Oh, okay. So there's two different people. So lawyer turned drug smuggler is Andrew Thornton, right? And then there's a corrupt Kentucky cop, which I guess in this instance is this Reba character who is just so, like, if it was a white guy, everyone would be like, wow, that's like the fucking blandest character of all time. But it's played by a black woman, but just brought like little to nothing to that role. Again, it was just like a plot device. It was just like, okay, we need a plot twist. Here's the plot twist. She's the one that's helping sit out the drug dealer to track down the cocaine. It's just a very like shoulder shrug type moment. And again, I think it's just, she's just there so that when Sid goes to kill her, O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s character, we start to see him in this light of, he's not all bad type of thing. I don't know. The bear ate $20 million worth of cocaine in 85, which is $55 million adjusted for inflation. So yeah, that's a lot of money that people are going to be pissed about. So yeah, very loosely based on the actual bear, No rampage actually him. In fact, no attacks by the bear recorded all inspired by a Reddit post recounting the story. There was probably a 5-minute window before he died where he was the most dangerous apex predator on the continent, and that's what spurred the thought process. The film opens with Jane, the song Jane by the track Jane by Jefferson Starship, which was also featured in Wet Hot American Summer. So I thought that was kind of an interesting subtle wink nod from Elizabeth Banks, so then that also puts me in the mindset like, oh, this is gonna be, I guess this is along the lines of Wet Hot American Summer, and it's just not. Like, it's not Wet Hot American Summer by any means. And maybe that's the way it should have gone. Like, it should have been that kind of approach as opposed to this. Again, this is why I was like almost against reviewing it, because I was like, the thought was, oh, I'm gonna watch it on Monday and I'm gonna give like a fucking glowing review. You got to see this. You don't got to see this in theaters. You can wait for it in streaming. I don't know that you're really missing anything that potential life-changing or like culture shifting, that kind of seismic type movement type thing. That's not this movie. It's just not. You're not coming away, like, I'm not quoting any lines. To me, like a comedy movie that causes a seismic shift in culture, it enters the zeitgeist, similar to Anchorman. Like, quotable lines, memorable characters that stick out to you, potential for Halloween costumes. There's all these little check boxes lists that you can go down and check off that you say, yep, this has now entered the zeitgeist. This is going to be on people's lists of favorite comedies, and it's more of a horror movie. And you'll see what I'm talking about when we get to the Megan review, because that is a horror comedy that pulls it off the right way, I think. So what do the critics say? Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, gave the film a score of 54 out of 100, with 58 critics giving mixed or average reviews. Cinema Score gave the film an average grade of B-. It's a bit high, in my opinion. Post Track, which polls people leaving the theaters, gave it an 80% positive score, with 67% saying they would definitely recommend it. I'm not part of that group. I guess I don't not recommend it. It's just like, you really need to temper your expectations. Or if you're the type of person that enjoys that kind of comedy, you're gonna love it. Observer film critic Mark Kermode rated the film 3 out of 5, saying it may not be Grizzly Man meets Scarface, but it leaves snakes on a plane standing on the runway. Again, I have not seen Snakes on a Plane. With Snakes on a Plane, you didn't even have to see the movie. We came away with Samuel L. Jackson's quote. Like, I'm tired of these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane. And maybe I should watch that today just to like compare and contrast. Because I mean, yeah, I get it. It's a B movie. It's supposed to be a B movie, right? Midnight showing type of B movie. I know people have mentioned, and I've seen this movie, and I've probably should watch it. Velocipaster, where it's like a pastor that can morph into a velociraptor. Like, it's just absurd. And maybe that's like the only thing that is needed for it to be funny throughout. But so what did Rotten Tomatoes? 70% of all critics gave it a favorable review with an average rating of 6.2 out of 10, while top critics, only 53% of top critics gave it a favorable review with an average rating of 5.1 out of 10. I was looking on IMDb. The IMDb rating for this is like 6.4 out of 10. And I think I gave it a 6 out of 10. And I would probably, if I had to do it over, I'd do like a mid to high 5, which you can't do on IMDb, but it would be probably a high 5. And if you give it a grade, definitely not a B-, C+. Critics' consensus: despite Cocaine Bear's half-baked plot and uneven acting, the titular fur fiend's scene-snorting frenzy will give B-movie enthusiasts a contact high. Yeah, so I guess that is the audience, and maybe that's where I guess there was a disconnect for me. Is like, I don't like Zombieverse. I should watch that and see what I'd come away with it. Like, is it fun in a way? Like, are the death scenes, and maybe that's the other part of it, is like, are the death scenes fun/funny? Like, they're weird. A lot of these death scenes in this movie are like, maybe just hit a little too close to reality. Like, I could see that really happening, and that's like, oh, that's real. That's not over the top, zany, wild. What did the audience have to say? So 75% of the verified audience gave it a favorable review with an average rating of 3.9 out of 5, and 76% of all audience gave it a favorable review with 3.9 out of 5 average rating. I'd say lower than that, lower than 3.9. I'd say, I guess it, oh boy, 3 out of 5? Yeah, I guess 3 out of 5. Because 3.5, that's like the cutoff mark for whether it's fresh or rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. 3.5 out of 5. If you go 3.5 or more, it's considered fresh, quote unquote. And then anything below that is rotten, which is such a crazy way to, people look at that 70% or the 53% and think, oh, that's 70 out of 100 or 53 out of 100. And it's like, doesn't really line up like that. And to see audience be 75, 76, they think that's out of 100. It's like, no, that's just based on this crazy arbitrary 3.5. So I give it a 3 out of 5. I didn't want my money back. I didn't walk out of the movie. It wasn't to that level, but it was just like, this could have been so much better. It's just like, there's just overfloweth with opportunities. And like they had decent plot points. There's a lot of it that they could have stripped away. There's a lot of it that it could have been like, and I get the reasoning behind it. And I don't have major beef with a lot of the reasoning behind a lot of what they decided to add and insert into the story. But it did feel like, well, we don't have enough here. And so we had to keep adding things. Whereas you could have maybe streamlined it a bit more. But I mean, again, I do think the horror aspects of it, and maybe this is where there's a disconnect with me. If this is just a horror movie, okay, and I should have, that's how my mind should have approached this. That's how I should approach this from a mindset standpoint. A good-ish horror movie. But in terms of a comedy, it fell way short of expectations and fell flat for me. But from a horror movie, it's like, it definitely elicited fear, and not so much fear, but the guttural, visceral reactions. I definitely had those. I mean, when the park ranger falls out of the back of the ambulance and like skids to a stop on her face, I was like about to puke. And when the Cubs are eating Ray Liotta's entrails, and when the male paramedic's hand is like dangling by a tendon, that all, like physical reactions. Is that fun for me? No. That's Cocaine Bear. I apologize. I guess I should apologize. I don't know what I should do. My mom texted me and was like, oh my God, have you heard about this movie Cocaine Bear? Which, things are fucking blowing up when your 72-year-old mother is like, have you heard about this movie? Anytime she's like, have you heard about it? It's like, okay, it's now hit that status, like mass status, whatever the fuck they call it. It's entered the zeitgeist sort of thing. And so I was like, yeah. And they were like, the person I was watching, they said that they were laughing throughout the whole movie. And I was like, then that person is a psycho. Okay. If you're laughing throughout this entire movie, I don't know. I guess I shouldn't knock you. To each their own. If you're laughing throughout this entire movie, I don't know if I want to hang out with you, but I'm glad you enjoyed it.